Good evening, Simon.
Good evening, Will.
How are you?
Splendid.
Good. You're here at Derby, the Quad Cinema.
Yes.
And you're doing In Conversation with Simon Callow for the Derby Film Festival.
Yeah.
But you're back next month as well, aren't you, in June?
Yeah, to do the book festival.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. What are you going to be doing then?
Well, the book festival, really, I'm talking about Orson Welles, and I'm talking about my book, One Man Band, which is the third volume of an ongoing and rather large biography of the great director. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk about my involvement in the book, how I got to write it, and then a lot, in fact, about Welles himself and the period covered by the book, a period of kind of heaven and hell for Welles when he was found it incredibly hard to make films, to get films made, but nonetheless managed to create, during the period covered in the book, two of his really best films ever, Touch of Evil, the great film noir that he made about corruption in the police on the Mexican border, and then Chimes at Midnight, which I believe is the greatest film he ever made, and one of the greatest films of the 20th century.
So what is it about? I mean, obviously you just said that in your opinion he's made one of the greatest films, of the 1900s. What is it about Orson Welles that makes you want to write, 3 books about him? There must be a real fascination there that really just makes you keep going, because, to write one book about someone is dedication, but then to write a sort of extended biography over 3 kind of editions, what is it about Orson Welles that makes you so fascinated?
Well, as everybody knows, there's a sort of enigma about Orson Welles, which is why he didn't do more, because he only made 8 films.
Wow.
And for the man who had made, at the age of 24, the film that was immediately acclaimed as the greatest film ever made, is rather extraordinary and requires some explanation. And the explanation essentially lies in Welles's personality. It's true that studios were sometimes difficult with him, and he had a lot of bad luck. But really, the reason for it lies within himself, in this extraordinary, complex, contradictory personality of this man built on such an extraordinary scale. Not only was he immensely tall and latterly, of course, immensely fat, but he was also a huge, charismatic personality of the most vivid kind. And people like that fascinate me. I'm very interested in personality. I'm interested particularly in personality as a trap. People who are imprisoned in their own personalities and thus unable to do what they might otherwise do. Welles was a supreme example of that.
So, did you ever get to meet?
No, I never did, I'm delighted to say. Because if I had done, I'm sure he would have influenced me into telling the story he wanted me to tell. Instead, I've done everything I can to tell the story that actually happened.
Okay, how much research goes into this?
Vast amount. The first batch of research that I did took me nearly 4 continuous months of interviewing people, of going to archives and so on. And then I've been at it on and off ever since. That's 25 years.
Wow.
And now I'll quite soon start the research for the 4th and final volume. I'll say that again, the 4th and final. This will be the last volume. I've got to start to do a whole lot, because there's a whole lot of new material about his last 20 years, and there are people that I must speak to that I haven't spoken to, people who I need to speak to again, having now known and learned as much as I have done about Welles. I want to come at them from a slightly different angle, people like Peter Bogdanovich and so on. And there's a huge new archive of Welles material. There's one in Munich, which I need to spend a lot more time in, and so on. So there's going to be a lot more work going into that book. The work that I did on volume 3 was the bulk of what I did 25 years ago, the actual interviews.
Okay, now a notable thing that you've kind of done in your career is you've played Charles Dickens.
Yes.
Is it 4 times you've played Charles Dickens?
Well, I suppose so, on and off, yes. I played him on the television when I reconstructed his public readings. I played him in Doctor Who a couple of times. I played him in a biographical film about Hans Christian Andersen. So yes, indeed. I have played him a number of times, and I did a show about him called The Mystery of Charles Dickens, which I didn't play him but talked about him and tried to evoke him. And I did something that nobody else has done, which is 2 one-man plays that Dickens wrote for himself to perform. I did that. So I've been immersed in Dickens, and then I wrote a book about him called Charles Dickens and the Great Theatre of the World, a biography, which I think was actually quite a useful contribution to Dickens' studies, because it really came at him from the perspective of his being a man of the theatre, which he very profoundly was.
So I mean, obviously no one that's alive now will have met Charles Dickens. He lived in, a long time ago in the Victorian era. But do you think that you're maybe quite like Charles Dickens, and that's why you've played him so many times, and you've got quite an interest in him?
I don't think I'm really very much like Dickens. I think I understand him quite well, but I don't really identify with him in any sense, and I don't think I'm very like him. Apart from anything else, he was, we have some things in common. Energy. I have a lot of energy. And Dickens certainly, especially as a young, almost at the very end of his life, he had staggering energy. But he had a single-mindedness that I absolutely don't have. I diffused myself very widely across a lot of things. Dickens did a lot of things, but he didn't allow him to distract him from his central purpose, which was writing these extraordinary novels. I wish I had that singleness of mind, but I don't have it.
Okay, so let me just talk about Doctor Who a minute, because I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who.
All right.
Or at least I was when Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant played the Doctor, because I think, I don't know, I was a lot younger then and I enjoyed it. So what was it like? Because it had just been revived, hadn't it? Had you watched Doctor Who, back in...
I watched the very, very first episode and hated it, and so I never watched any more, because I don't like science fiction very much. So I really wasn't a Doctor Who fan at all. And when they said to me, we want to, they said that the agent said they've sent us a script, Doctor Who script, they're reviving Doctor Who, I knew that, and they want to do an episode about Dickens. I said, I didn't want to do anything which sends Dickens up, they're just going to make fun of him. And they said, no, it doesn't quite read like that. So I read it and I said, it's actually wonderful, this. It actually really does give you a sense of what Dickens might have been like. And that scene at the end, before the Doctor goes off in the TARDIS, when Dickens says, can I ask you a question? And the Doctor says, of course. He says, will I be read? And the Doctor says, yes.
Yeah.
And Dickens says, how long for? And he says, forever. It was very, very moving.
Yeah,
beautiful, wonderfully written, beautifully played by Christopher. I liked Christopher immensely. We got on very well. So, film, that episode that I did called the
Unquiet Dead.
The Unquiet Dead. That's it. Yes, it was directed by a man called Eros Lynn, who's a wonderful director. Terrific, absolutely great. I'm very, very pleased to have done that, because I think it might have brought a few more kids to the understanding that Dickens was an actual person rather than somebody whose books rather dauntingly sit on the shelves and are very long and look very strange on the page.
Okay, and let's talk about the comparison of film and theatre, because you've done a lot of both. You were in Ace Ventura along with Jim Carrey, and you're in Four Weddings and a Funeral, and A Room with a View. What's it like? Because obviously it's obvious that you've done a lot of theatre with the likes of Sarah McKellen and Patrick Stewart. What's it like? Can you compare the two? What is obviously you're acting in both, but what is the difference, and what is it? What's it like? Sorry, it's a long-worded question. But what's the difference when you get a theatre gig and then you get a TV or film gig? What's the difference? Do you have a difference in your mind, or do you just think, right, okay, let's go and do it?
Well, everything about it is different, apart from the simple fact that you're playing a character. But everything about the storytelling in film is just totally different from the storytelling in the theatre. And of course, one single, simple difference is there's an audience in the theatre. It makes a huge difference, that everything you do is for that audience there tonight, at that moment. Whereas in the film, you're recording something, you're creating something which is lively and alive, but which will then be recorded and becomes history, actually. So nothing that the audience can do will change the film, whereas the audience fundamentally changes the play. And of course, one of the great delights of the theatre is that you can keep getting better, whereas in a movie you can't. And most actors who look at themselves in movies go, "Oh God, I could have done that better. I really could have done that better," and there's no chance of that. There's no improving it. Also, in the theatre, you're always, even if it's a small theatre, projecting out to the audience. You're projecting. In the film, it's a very different matter. You're being, and the camera records what you're doing, but you're not doing it for the camera. And you're not even really exactly doing it for the audience. You're doing it for itself. And that's a different thing.
Okay, Simon, it's been wonderful to speak to you. Thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.